All right, welcome in. That was a brutal performance from the 49ers against the Chiefs yesterday. And, from a psychological standpoint, when we talk about the fans and what they've wanted to see for several months after the Super Bowl, after two Super Bowl losses to the Chiefs, it's a big gut punch. I totally get it. I look at numbers like these, and those are ugly. You want to be in the darker green. 49ers instead are in the darker purple efficiency wise. Running, passing efficiency, nothing good for San Francisco. I talked about earlier today that the bedrock for the 49ers, the basis is the run offense. If you want the balance that you're looking for, if you want to be able to run play action, as the 49ers tried, but it ended with an interception the first time they tried it yesterday. I mean, the Chiefs totally stayed home. You have to be able to sell the run game. It's mandatory. It must be something that is a legitimate threat. And it wasn't for the 49ers yesterday. So Kansas City won this game. As Kyle Shanahan said, 49ers got their ass kicked. And these are the splits of getting your ass kicked. That being said, the 49ers are just 3-4. They're not 1-6, 0-7, 2-5. They're 3-4. We take a look at the ESPN standings here. These are the ones that have point differential. So I'll go ahead and use these up on the screen. San Francisco, we see down here, currently in second place, only a game out from the top of the NFC West. It's a good thing they're not in the NFC North. But if you want to sort this by point differential, 49ers, and this is going to be most predictive of team strength. We've already seen the 49ers beat up on the Seahawks. They still lead the NFC West in point differential, plus 22. For comparison, the entire NFC North right here, they're at over plus 40, which is remarkable. You have 4 winning teams, 2 teams over plus 60. One of them has already beaten the 49ers. The Vikings, the Bears have been playing well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the Packers yesterday got a win over the Texans. They've won 3 in a row. The NFC North has been a power so far, and the 49ers have to play their way to that level if they want to make a run in January. But first, they have to make it to January. If the season ended today, the 49ers would not be in the postseason because they're behind the Seahawks in their division. So what San Francisco needs to do is they need to deliver a performance like the 2 that they had against the Rams in 2021 and 2022 to turn around those seasons. And from a strategic standpoint, I can explain here because I think that a lot of the same dynamics are at play. In 2021, the 49ers entered a home game against the Rams on Monday Night Football at 3-5, an even worse record than they have right now. And they were facing, and honestly, some of the issues they're facing now. They're playing worse defense in 2021 than they are now. But offensively, they were a disjointed mess. That was the year where Jimmy Garoppolo was dealing with some injuries and Trey Lance was playing instead of him early, and the 49ers just weren't finding any sort of rhythm. And they really had to go back to their low-risk, high-reward selves. And Tom Brady talked about that yesterday, actually more in the context of the Chiefs. But if you can emulate what the Chiefs are doing at 6-0, you're probably going to be in a good spot. Anyway, the 49ers turned it around against the Rams. They beat them 31-10 with a low-risk, high-reward game plan, high passing percentage from Jimmy Garoppolo, ground and pound. It wasn't a very efficient run game, but it was a productive one. They were going for 3.54 yards per carry, but they weren't losing yardage. So they were raising the ceiling or they're raising the floor on their run game, and they were making sure that they stayed ahead of the sticks. They beat the Rams. They turned the season around. The 49ers finished in the NFC Championship game that year. In 2022, the 49ers were 3-4, following a loss to Kansas City at home. That should sound familiar. That's exactly what happened yesterday. And they were headed to LA. That was the first game that Christian McCaffrey would play a high dosage of snaps. And they beat the Rams bad. It was 30-something to, I think it was 31-14. Actually have that score up here. In 2022, That game against the Rams was a 31-14 win following the 44-23 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. McCaffrey was the man in that game at LA, if you remember, in 2022. He threw for a touchdown. He caught a touchdown, and he ran for a touchdown. 49ers got back to their formula. Obviously, they're probably not going to have Christian McCaffrey yet for this next game against the Cowboys, but they can still take the low-risk, high-reward formula, and if they execute, they can apply it successfully against the Dallas Cowboys. So the same thing that helped the 49ers turn the season around against the Rams in 21 and 22 can be what really salvages the first half of the season here against the Cowboys heading into the bye week. Just so happens that the Rams were a team against, of whom the 49ers had a consistent number in 2021 and 2022. In fact, they hadn't lost to them since, I think, 2018. It wasn't until the 2021 NFC Championship game where the Rams were able to get the beleaguered 49ers. But the regular season success for San Francisco had the Rams as their get-well team. Well, the Cowboys, that's been a team against whom the 49ers have had a lot of success as well. Dallas is going to have to be the get-well opponent for the 49ers this week. And they've got to make sure that the pivot plays go in their favor. Those made the absolute difference in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. I would say that first, I've rewatched the game a couple times now. I have some notes here I'm going to go through. The first play action where Kansas City did not bite on the play fake spoke volumes, because the 49ers came out looking to reestablish that identity. They wanted to run. They wanted to get the Chiefs in zone coverage. They wanted to play this game on their terms, but obviously they weren't blocking well enough for it, and they didn't have enough room opened up on the defensive side in that first drive. So it was 3 runs and a punt. So the second drive, the 49ers decided to open up with play action. Brock Purdy throws a terrible interception. It's a ball he just needs to eat or throw away. He can't force the ball into George Kittle. But as Tom Brady said on the broadcast, you've got to give credit to Kansas City's defense for staying at home against the play action. Well, I will say this. It's a whole heck of a lot easier to stay at home against play fakes if the run efficiency is not there, if the run threat is not there. And the 49ers just quite simply weren't there with the run efficiency. Early downs, not efficient all game. All plays, not efficient all game. And that's deep in the dark purple. The early rush efficiency ended up being okay over the course of the whole game. You could see that right here. But Kansas City wasn't buying it at all until late in the game when they had a commanding lead. And I think that Jordan Mason's big run up the middle, the 26-yarder in the second half, was probably the 49ers' one saving grace as far as this early rush efficiency score goes. And it wasn't even in the dark green. It was somewhere in the light green here. So it's not, and they're still averaging less than a negative EPA score on early runs, which just simply is not what we see out of powerhouse teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, who had an early rush score of 0.10. Positive score. They were able to get the Chiefs ahead of the sticks, and the 49ers, if and when the Chiefs did run play action, were much more likely to bite on it. So everything is tied together offensively. The 49ers did not pass to set up the run efficiently enough. They did not run to set up the pass well enough, which is why it looked like a disjointed mess. This is why they weren't in position at the main pivot plays. I mean, I think the main pivot play in this game was the Brandon Ayuk drop. We're going to have the injury update on Brandon Ayuk probably in about 2 hours after Kyle Shanahan speaks to see if the ACL tear has been confirmed or if the 49ers got much better news than that. But they were down, 7-3 in the first half. They were looking for some rhythm. They hadn't picked up a first down via non-penalty play yet. And the throw was perfect from Brock Purdy to Brandon Ayuk, and he dropped the pass. It's a play that a $30 million receiver absolutely has to make. It had massive negative downstream effects for the 49ers, as the very next play was a punt return for the Chiefs that went, 50-plus yards. Then Kansas City scored again. It was 14-3, and it was a come from behind effort from there on out for the 49ers. Another massive pivot play was the second interception from Brock Purdy. This one intended for Ronnie Bell. Obviously a miscommunication on the play. 49ers ended up saying it was Brock Purdy's fault that Ronnie Bell ran the correct route. Purdy at the time obviously thought that Bell was going to run deeper on the corner. He didn't. It was a pick, and it went from a chance to take the lead, at least with a field goal for the 49ers, to the Chiefs getting the ball and marching downfield and going up by more than a possession, and they wouldn't blink the rest of the way. But there was the domino effect of some of these plays in the game yesterday that truly derailed the 49ers. The good news is if you get the domino effect in a negative direction, you can also just as easily get it in the positive direction if you actually make the plays at critical junctures. Now, what somebody like Christian McCaffrey does, and the 49ers are planning to get him back early next month, is that he heightens the chances of the domino effect working in your favor. For example, there were a couple runs in this game, including Mason's big 26-yarder. I wasn't sure that Christian McCaffrey wouldn't have turned that into a touchdown because there was one safety to beat. We know McCaffrey has higher top-end speed. Then there was a Mason run later in the game before Purdy's final interception near the goal line where Mason picked up about 6 or 7. Those are the types of plays that McCaffrey was finding the paint on, that McCaffrey was scoring on. And if he does find the paint on such plays, then you minimize the chances of something wrong happening after them because the play is in the end zone. So for San Francisco, it's very, very easy to look at the errors that compound over the course of these longer drives, but it's harder to see what would happen if they could knock out a few explosives to minimize the opportunity ground for those errors. Some of that's on Brock Purdy with the deep passes yesterday, especially the first one to George Kittle. Kittle was open. If Kittle is hitting stride, and I know Tom Brady, I just watched the replay. Tom Brady really harped on this. He said if he hits Kittle in stride with a better throw, more than an average throw, Kittle has a chance to score. Instead, a lot went wrong for the 49ers later in the drive, and they had to settle for a field goal. The Jacob Cowing play, Brady wasn't as upset about that throw, but if it's put more on the money, well, then that ends up being a 49ers touchdown, and then Colton McKivitz doesn't have to pass block again against George Karlaftis, and Purdy doesn't get hit as he tries to squeeze the ball into really tight coverage because everybody was blanketed. So one thing that the Chiefs, I think, are really good at, even despite the fact they had 2 giveaways in this game, they weren't at the highest of leverage situations. The 49ers had some mistakes that weren't necessarily interceptions at the highest of leverage situations. They're also shorthanded, so they didn't slam the door on opportunities for the Chiefs to get some of these takeaways, and the end result is what we see. So the end result is a Kansas City game that minimized mistakes and a San Francisco game that essentially maximized the opportunity and the occurrence of those mistakes. The way that the 49ers were able to turn things around in that 2021 season and then the 2022 season was by minimizing the opportunity for negative occurrences on pivot plays, by being super efficient back at ground zero, which was the run game. And they turned that around against the Rams in 2021 and 2022. So they're going to have to do that against the Cowboys. I talked about Tom Brady discussing the low risk, high reward plays that Kansas City was running. They have the second fewest negative plays in the league. That kind of stuff only works consistently if your offensive line is playing at a high level. And the Chiefs have invested a ton into the interior offensive line. 49ers had some low floor plays yesterday from Jake Brendel, Aaron Banks. Eric Saubert was trying to block alongside Aaron Banks on a double team whiff that led to Brock Purdy getting sacked in the first half. That helped derail the drive. San Francisco has traditionally been able to recenter the focus of how they play with an emphasis on run blocking. So in the past, they've been better run blockers than they have been pass blockers. Like the run blocking has been better than the pass protection. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case this year. I think they've improved actually a little bit in pass protection, and the run blocking may have gotten a bit worse. But they do have to. It's gotten better at spots. It's definitely gotten better to the right side with McKivitz and Dominic Pooney. But there seems to have been a regression at left guard and center, so that's why they can't get a yard when they need to pick up a yard up the middle. That was a huge problem yesterday. Jake Brendel committed the holding penalty on the second play of the game after Jordan Mason had, a 7 or 8 yard gain that could have put the 49ers in business. That was all trouble for San Francisco. So they can't get to this place of low risk, high reward that the Chiefs were at yesterday until the line play improves. Now, personnel-wise, everybody's going to talk about John Feliciano, who I think is healthy now, but hasn't been activated yet from the knee injury. Maybe he takes over at one of those interior line spots, maybe that center spot, to help the 49ers fortify that and take the next step. But you can also set the line up for better play by making the plays in your strong suit downfield. So say that the strong suit for the 49ers is pass protection, or it's better this year than it had been in years prior. Well, Ayuk has to make that catch, right? Brandon Ayuk has to make that catch. Brock Purdy has to make better throws. Brock Purdy can't be throwing to the defensive back on the miscommunication with Ronnie Bell. The 49ers have to have that down regardless of how many skill position weapons are missing. It just has to be something that the 49ers nail down, because the pass has to set up the run. But once the pass does set up the run, then the interior linemen are going to be playing a game downhill instead of uphill, and it's going to look a little bit better at that center and left guard position. That's the way that the 49ers were able to turn things around from 3-5 in 2021 and 3-4 in 2022. They were able to fix things because they went down back to the basics of what they did better. They were able to fix things at that ground zero, at that ground floor. And then you saw the domino effect work into their favor. So yesterday, the biggest negative domino effect play was Brandon Ayuk's drop. We just have news on the Brandon Ayuk injury, by the way, so I'm probably going to start a new video to get that out there. But according to Jordan Schultz, it has been confirmed to be a season-ending knee injury, which I would assume is the ACL tear, because that's typically the season-ending knee injury, and that's what the 49ers feared yesterday. Big step forward for Jacob Cowing yesterday. I talked about Cowing, and I talked about Ricky Pearsall up on the San Francisco Standard. Why don't you go ahead and check out the article? We got some details finally from Ricky Pearsall about how he went through that entire ordeal following the shooting on August 31st, because Ricky Pearsall talked for the first time to the media on the record. And it just so happens the 49ers are going to need Ricky Pearsall. They're going to need Jacob Cowing, who took a major step forward yesterday. That curl and go move, the double move, was excellent. They're going to need more separation. This team already was last in total separation in 2020 to begin the 2024 season, 2.8 yards on average on receptions for the 49ers, something that absolutely must get better for San Francisco. Without Brandon Ayuk, it's not going to get easier, but he wouldn't get into the type of separation that he had been prior to the contract, prior to this season. I think he obviously was still working his way into shape, at least through September, obviously was dropping some passes as well. Juwan Jennings is a really good separator, though, and the 49ers will need him back next week. I think Kyle Shanahan expects that to happen, but the youngsters, they're definitely going to have to be part of this mix for the 49ers, and that is Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, who did take a big step yesterday. So anyway, that's that. I might step in and answer a few questions here in a second. One other thing I noticed when I was watching the tape, Malik Mustafa playing like a missile. Now, I didn't like where he was on the Patrick Mahomes quarterback draw or quarterback sneak. It was a draw. It was a draw that put the game essentially out of reach in the fourth quarter. He got washed out a little bit to the left side. The 49ers didn't have the wrong defense called on the play. It was fourth down from the goal line. I thought the Chiefs were crazy to line up in the shotgun on the play. I thought that might have been a chance for San Francisco to get back in the game, to salvage something at the goal line. Imagine if they would have been able to lock down that goal line stand. But what happened on the play is that Malik got washed out, crisscrossed with a route, I think, out of the backfield on the left side behind the linebacker, behind his own defender. And then he just got over to Patrick Mahomes too late. He was the one safety valve for the defense to take away the quarterback draw. But early on, when Malik Mustafa hit Kareem Hunt, big play for the 49ers. A little bit later, when we saw Malik on one of the run stops, that was also a huge play for San Francisco. I mean, he's a missile coming down from that second level. I think he's improving the safety play for San Francisco, which was a big issue when this defense was really leaking oil through the first couple games of the season. Defense has obviously gotten better for the 49ers. They ran out of gas yesterday when the offense wasn't giving enough help, but this game definitely falls on the shoulders of the 49ers offense. And then obviously that one bad special teams play, but it's one that you could avoid if you're actually moving the ball and you're not punting as much as the 49ers were yesterday. So we're going to get to the Ayuk injury here with a separate video. Please join that one. I'll answer a few questions just to wrap this one up, just so we keep some things on topic. But I have to decline a call right now. And I'm going to go to the Q&A. This must be an emergency, guys, so I'm going to have to get going. My friend keeps on calling me. All right, we'll do the Ricky Pearsall video in just a second, or the Brandon Ayuk video in just a second. I'll talk to you guys soon.